Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I kind of want to talk about, just generally like run down like one of my favorite video game series. It's called Shadow Hearts. If you're unfamiliar with Shadow Hearts, it is a turn-based JRPG. I'm not even sure if it's actually a JRPG. I've always thought of it as one, but I'm not even sure. It's this action-y kind of fantasy horror type of RPGs. There are 3 games in the series. Technically there's 4. There's a prequel game that was on the PlayStation called Codeka, but amongst the Shadow Hearts games themselves, which Codeka still counts because of what went down in Codeka. Even though I'm not that familiar with it, it did influence Shadow Hearts 1, which did influence 2 and 3. But Shadow Hearts 1 is just, well, Shadow Hearts. Shadow Hearts 2 is Shadow Hearts Covenant, and then Shadow Hearts 3, I always forget the title. It's like From the New World or just The New World. Either way, they're set in early 1900 times, each respective game. Like the first game is takes place like 1913. The second one takes place like 2 years later, and the third one takes place 1929, so during like the Great Depression. And they actually are set in real life settings. Like the first 2 games, you bounce between like Europe and Asia. Like the first game you start off in Asia and go to Europe. The second game you start off in Europe and go to Asia, like back and forth. It's just like different places and real places. Especially even, there are more places I'm more familiar with in 3 because it's actually set in North America, and there's actually some South America aspects to it too. Like you go to Chicago. Because I vaguely think you even go to Hollywood at one point. But it's also like you meet like certain historical characters. Like in the 3rd game you meet Al Capone. In the 2nd one you meet Rasputin and Anastasia. There's like a blend of a lot of stuff mixed in. Obviously, like there's so many cool things about this game that I feel like are very unique to it specifically. Like one thing is the combat, as I brought up earlier, it's turn-based. Now 2 things about that. One, anytime you're performing any action using special abilities, magic, attacking, whatever the case may be, when you're doing that, there's a thing in the game known as the judgment ring. Basically there's a circle, there's a ring, a circle, and your like hit spots on it. But basically every time you hit one of those areas, you perform your attack. If you miss the ring, like say like it does one rotation, you only hit 1, he'll only perform that 1 attack. He won't perform the 2nd or 3rd one. That's kind of how it goes. It's a very fascinating thing. I highly recommend, if you're ever curious about it yourself, I mean, I highly recommend you play the game in general, but also like I highly recommend you look up videos. I know there's LPs of it. Like I've never watched any myself, but I have come across like multiple LPs, which I wouldn't mind sitting down and watching some, just because I've not played those games in years, mainly because I don't have the ability to, because I don't own any. Because it's originally like Codeka, a PlayStation game. All 3 Shadow Hearts games are PS2 games. I currently don't have the PS2 anymore. But another thing that's cool about this game too is there's a sanity meter. Basically, like when you're fighting monsters and demons, which are kind of the main enemies of the game, that basically you like it fighting like the malice, that's the evil intent that's given off by monsters, slowly kind of takes its toll on you as the battle goes on, and every turn you lose sanity points. And once your sanity points reach 0, you go berserk. And yes, your sanity points can go into the negatives too. The longer the battle goes on, like, you'll go insane, and once you go berserk, you'll end up, your character will they won't like attack the party, but they'll attack the enemy on their own. You won't lose control of that character. Obviously, you can change that by using, I forgot what the items are called. I think they're called SPCs or whatever, but basically they recover your sanity point. Because another thing about these games too is tone-wise too, they're very different. Like I brought up the fact is that they're very kind of horror-esque games too. At the very least, one somewhat too. Definitely Codeka and Shadow Hearts 1 had the like heavier like horror theme to them. Like I guess like the theme I can kind of compare it to, like if I had to compare it like tone-wise and like the look of it, it's kind of like, I'd say Castlevania is kind of the closest thing that comes to my mind, which is kind of interesting considering the fact is that there are vampire characters across the games. Interestingly enough, they're all family members, and it's kind of like a little secret boss type of thing, because it's actually like how you get each of these vampire family members' ultimate weapons is you fight the next member in the family. So like in the first game, you have access to the vampire Keith. To get his ultimate weapon, you have to fight his brother Joachim, who's in the form of the Golden Bat. On the second game, you play as Joachim, and you have to fight his sister, their little sister Hilda, who's in the form of her pink bat self. And then obviously in the 3rd game, you play Hilda, and you end up fighting her grandfather, which there wasn't a 4th game. I wish there was. I wish someone would do something with this series, get access to it. But I mean, it's been such a long time, because I'm pretty sure like Shadow Hearts 3 came out mid 2000s, so I had to be like 2004, 5, or 6 when that came out. But nevertheless, that was just kind of like an interesting little thing to the game as well. But like going back to it, it's like they are more horror themed, just in the sense of like what it Like, you know, they're a little bit more bloodier. Like, they're kind of got this creepy, eerie, you know, horror aspect to it. It's not like, oh, jump scares, but it's just kind of got this like dark, I guess motif would be kind of the word to go for in that case. But subsequent games 2 and 3, they kind of kick up more the silly factor. Yes, there's some like comedy aspects to 1. 2 and 3 kind of kicked up the more comedy aspect to it. Like I said, like at least in 2 they do still have that darker tone to it, but 3 doesn't have it as much. It is a little more sillier. So, which I didn't mind it. Like, I know like amongst the games, I think 3 is kind of like, to most people, is the weakest. Once again, I don't know how most people feel about it. I do remember seeing like reviews in like PlayStation magazines and stuff like that way back in the day, but it's like, I don't know, like it's not a video game series I hear a lot of people talk about. Once again, I see LPs of it and stuff like that, but I don't know like how like most people feel about it in general. I really like those video game series, and like I brought up earlier too, I would love for someone to do something with it. I don't know if it's like a remake, you know, or like some weird continuation of it, or maybe kind of like a spiritual successor to it. Maybe there is one and I'm not sure of, but I would love that. I just don't, because that's a series that I like, that I want more of, because it's just like I said, you could just, you know, especially just like every aspect of it is very unique to them. And another thing I want to bring up about the Shadow Hearts game, the cool thing about Shadow Hearts is that it was my first video game that introduced me to the aspect of multiple endings. Each one of the games, I don't know if it applies to Codeka, but definitely the Shadow Hearts games are like, there are multiple endings. There's a good ending and a bad ending, and subsequently there are like canon endings, because the games are continuations of each other. Events in Shadow Hearts 1 lead to what happens in the Shadow Hearts 2, and a lot of stuff. One particular thing in Shadow Hearts 3 led to the events in Shadow Hearts 3. Like, there's even like obviously recurring characters throughout the games. Yeah, I mean, like I brought it up in that video, but I'll probably reiterate it here. I won't say what exactly goes down, but like amongst like I said, there are canon endings. So like for the first game, the bad ending is a canon ending. The second game, I mean, with the way the third game is, and the fact is a certain character pops up, it's like, oh, obviously like the good ending, which is the canon ending for the second one. And because there was never a fourth one, you don't know where the canon ending lies in the third game or not. I would kind of hope on the good ending side, but I mean, you never know, like I said, because there was no fourth game to confirm what ending was canon. I've never actually looked it up to see which one is considered canon or not. Maybe I will after this, maybe I won't, I don't know. I know this is just me going on extensively on something, and like it's a stupid video, I know, but it's just like, it's a video game series that I really like, that I want to talk about. Like, if you can, if you have a PlayStation 2 and you're able to track down this game, or if it is on like, I don't know if it's any PlayStation stores or anything, or the whole backwards compatibility, whatever the aspect is, if you can track down this game and you're able to play it, like I highly recommend you do it. Like, or if you can't, like, you know, check out some videos online to see like if it's something that would interest you anyway. Like, it's just a video game series that I really like. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.